Welcome back to Rational Man. As you can see, I'm back from vacation and I've got a better studio than I did before. Why is it better? For one, it's cooler. We've moved down to the dungeon levels and obviously it is bigger, so I have room for bigger props, such as this lovely brass telescope in the old traditional style, which represents our desire to see more clearly and evidently far away. Now on this side, our other new prop for the month is this remarkable but tiny village composed entirely of beeswax. This obviously represents, or perhaps I should say symbolizes, or signifies sanity. Today's topic is sanity. Now, we've heard the word a billion times. We've seen it all over the news and all over our TV shows. We use it in everyday life for comic effect, for dramatic effect, to attempt to win an argument, and of course when filling out 5150s. But what does it really mean? Well, most of us can agree that sanity is a good thing, so we'll start from that. Now, obviously, some of you will find this topic a little close to home. So for those of you who are somehow insulted by my interpretation of sanity, feel free to just stand up and yell at the top of your lungs, "That's just your opinion!" And I'll just pause and hear you out and then say, "Well, alrighty then," and we'll continue. Okay, so sanity. Sanity is a stack of filters, mental routines that you've accumulated during your life, the purpose of which is to deal with reality. Reality is harsh and confusing, and we all need a certain maze to run it through before it makes sense to us and we know how to respond. Now, insanity isn't a particular number of filters. You don't have to hit a certain number, although admittedly it's good to have a certain number. Those of us with too few filters will find ourselves at odds in, let's say, social applications if we're socially inhibited. Or for those of you with real life lack of experience, you'll find certain routines would be helpful for dealing with things like high surf conditions or wildlife or something like that, which can be very awkward if handled improperly. Now, too few, as we say, can be a little awkward, but it's not nearly as devastating as having too many. Too many. Good reference point would be like, say, Bob Wiley from What About Bob? Obviously, he had so many bad routines that it inhibited every factor of his normal life. And again, it's not how many, it's the ratio pretty much of how many good ones versus how many bad ones you have. Have too many bad ones and you might not be insane, but you're definitely not getting invited to many parties. Now, where do you get these filters? Some of them are given to you by your parents when you're young, like look both ways before you cross the street. Most of your parents told you that, and that's a good one. Other ones from your parents aren't very good at all, such as step on a crack, break your mother's back. Sounds a little self-serving on your mother's part, and in reality it just doesn't hold up to examination. You know, I mean, you've stepped on a crack, your mother's back isn't broken. If you truly believed that your mother's back would be broken if you stepped on a crack, then in clinical terms you're what we call a moron. Well, alrighty then. Now, obviously, there are reasons not to step on cracks, especially if you're wearing high heels, but we needn't go into them. Similarly, other things we've heard, you know, walking under a ladder, maybe of use, being afraid of black cats, or the number 13, possibly not so very much. And of course, there are other methods of discovering things that our parents never told us. Never handle red hot objects, a good one, if you haven't come across that yet. And of course, there's also the ones that we get directly beamed into our head from outer space. Right, well, so all these routines help us deal with reality. Now, I'm going to use a metaphor here. I'm going to compare reality to a tree. Now, a tree is 99.9% bark, trunk, branches, twigs, all that stuff. But we normally see a tree just as a collection of leaves. And if you've never lived in a country where you've seen the leaves fall off the trees periodically, you might not be familiar with what the reality of a tree is. You just see the 0.1% that looks fluffy and green. And again, if your parents were overprotective and they never let you climb a tree, you have no real concept of the reality of trees either. Now, both of these people who've been exposed to reality of trees from living in cold countries or climbing trees or having personal contact with trees are going to have a lot of advantages over the average sheltered life person whose mother was protective and let them view trees from a distance and always lived in a tropical climate where trees are leafy year-round. Now, okay, these people will react differently when suddenly a strong storm comes up, let's say, and strips all the leaves off the tree. Pretty much everyone else is going to be content with that or be able to deal with it, except the kid who's never seen it that way before. Now, if you've been familiar with a leafy, fluffy green tree your whole life, and suddenly it's this stark, twiggy, craggy looking thing, remember this is a metaphor of reality, you might not be able to deal with it. And your strong wind that metaphorically strips the trees off your metaphor of reality could be any number of things. It could be a traumatic accident, like a car accident, or a divorce, or a battlefield incident, or perhaps just sitting under a bow tree too long. Whatever happens to be that suddenly makes you see reality as it really is going to kind of suck for you at first. You may actually be insane for a while. Now, there's two ways you can deal with it. You can either build new routines around the new reality that you've perceived and be even saner than you were before, because now your concept of reality is much closer to the actual reality. Or you can do like most people and go nuts for a while and then go into therapy for the rest of your life because you can't deal with what a tree really looks like when you see it. Now, either way is fine as long as it helps you get by. You know, I mean, many people will pretend that the incident will never happen again, the wind will never blow again, the tree will always be green and leafy like they've always expected it to be. And they'll just do their best to forget and go on with their lives. Now, I'm not here to say one method's better than the other, but you will notice that there are certain people who are a little extra grounded, a little extra sane among us. You might find that they've had some incident like that in the past. Not necessarily. But really, of more interest to you, wouldn't it be wise to ask how you can be more sane than you are now? Well, if you subscribe to my idea about the stack of filters, there's two ways you can go. Either you can sort out the bad filters and throw them away, or you can add new filters, good ones, that'll help you in your life to the stack. Again, it's not an on-off switch. You're not either sane or insane. It's just a preponderance, a trend. Sanity is a trend. Do you have more good routines or more bad routines? Which way are you going to go with it? Well, how do you do this? Examine your life. If you're content in all aspects of it, great. If you're not, try to analyze what's wrong. Is it part of your work? Is it part of your domestic life? Is it your kid? Your finances? Now, obviously, you'll have some parts of your life that you are circumstantially unable to deal with. Your circumstances are what they are. Your responses to those circumstances are what you have to deal with. Now, that's where your little stack comes in. You're applying all these filters to your situation and relying on them to produce an outcome. Now, if you're not getting the right outcome for the situation, and given that you can't change the situation, time to whip out the new filters. Look at it, analyze it, come up with something different to do. I'd like to know how you're doing, actually. Sometime, write to me. ask@rationalman.com. Send me your questions if you haven't worked it out yet. Tell me your success stories if you have any. And as always, I'll see you next time.